How's it going, guys? Pepper beef too spicy. How you guys doing? Hope you guys doing all right. Been a while, and for the first time ever on my channel, I'm actually gonna be talking about Lei Wulong, and it's like a whole year since he came out. Pretty much a whole year since he came out. And today, on September 5th, as the time of this recording, the Season 3 patch notes have just come out, and Lei Wulong's received a good amount of changes, like a sizable amount of changes actually, and most of them were buffs, so it's looking pretty good. In the rest of the video, though, I'm also going to be talking about the changes they made to Leo, as well as they made to Law and Noctis, since I play those characters as well. And overall, looking at the changes here, I want to say that not all of them were something that I would have exactly wanted in terms of like a change, but they are welcome. There's not the changes exactly what I wanted, but they are good changes nonetheless. A general theme of his changes is that they are making his combos and mids a lot better in tracking low profile, so they're a lot easier time hitting characters who are small or low profile, especially with up 4 3+4 1+2. His rage drives overall got a lot faster and better as a result. And he has, the most notable thing is that he has a launcher off his clean hit down back 4, which is something that he's traditionally always had in Tekken, and this is the first Tekken where he doesn't really have that. But overall, really good changes, and we're going to go through them one by one, and let's take a look. So, the first change is that Snake Rage Drive goes from 20 to 15 frame in startup. This is especially good because Snake Rage Drive, in my opinion, is one of his best rage drives. It is the easiest to access in terms of what its potential is, which is this. It's the wall, basically a death fist, more or less, in terms of rage drive types, and it is something that I find very, very useful in general. Is when I need to knock down someone with the wall, whatever. If I do why is he blocking? Oh, that's why. If I do like a wall combo and they get up, whatever, and then I'll do rage drive immediately so I can put 4th mix up at the wall. Or sometimes I will use this to bait, like I'll use the snake stance to bait someone to get close to me, and then I'll use rage drive because it does have a mini backswing blow and sidestep kind of effect, which can be really useful in being effective on your opponent. And the fact that it's faster changes a lot of things, because 20 to 15 is a substantial speed increase. Most notably, it's going to make it a lot easier to use after 1-1 forward, because 1-1 forward is +6, which means that the rage drive as it is now would pretty much be interrupted by almost anything, since it would be coming out at 14 frames. Which means that you can still jab him or down 1-4-1 or whatever, and you would still interrupt Lei. But with the change, 1-1 forward into rage drive will be uninterruptible, which makes it a lot easier to apply the mix-up without even being contested. To a lesser extent, off of Razor Rush into Snake, which is -2 on hit, and I believe -11 on block, it's going to make this a lot harder to interrupt as well, because even though technically it's not free frame data-wise, the opponent will still have to react to the stance transition itself, and the fact that it's coming out faster, as well as has that mini backswing blow effect, as well as like a high evasiveness and sidestep, it's going to make it a lot harder for them to stop you, which is going to make it used a lot more often, which is going to be good overall. Really good change. The other really snake transitions, it doesn't really affect too much. Like, it doesn't really affect it here that much, because down 4 down from Snake is not really one of my favorite options, unless it's on Okazemi. Although I suppose that if you did knock someone down the wall and did this for Okazemi and they got up, you could do this really simply. But at the same time, you could have always done that anyways with down 4-2-4 into Snake, or down 4 down Snake on Okazemi. The rage drive effect doesn't really change that, although overall it helps it come out faster, which is going to be beneficial, although it doesn't particularly help that situation by itself. Not sure if it would be free after a 5 gates parry, but nonetheless you would still do 1-2-1 there, which sounds pretty good. It would honestly depend on how late you parried a move and what kind of move you parried. Dragon Rage Drive has a similar effect to the Snake Rage Drive, in that it knocks back very far, although notably it is less plus, I believe, on block, which doesn't really matter too much. It's a it's a difference of like plus 10 and plus 11 at the wall. It doesn't really matter. And when you block it, it has less pushback, as you can see here. It has less pushback, whereas if you block Snake, it has like a million years of pushback. But Caleb just used time to measure distance. But anyways, so the change about this one is that it was decreased from 17 to 15 frames, and the frame data change, the speed increase is not as substantial, but that's also because I want to say that Rage Rush from Dragon is the most safe and the most advantageous out of all of the Rage Rush transitions. It is plus 3 on hit and negative 10 on block, which once again with the same scenario as Snake Rage Drive is that this being 15 instead of 17, whether you're at plus 3 or negative 10, which doesn't really matter since punishing the Rage Rush transitions is already pretty tough because you need to be really, really on point because the punishable frames is actually when he's transitioning, not when he's actually stopped at the stance itself. So it makes it really tricky to react to the block frames. But nonetheless, it is going to be faster. So that means that this will be, once again, harder to interrupt. If you hit Dragon on a hit, it's plus 3, which means that from 15, it'll come out at 12 frames, which means that it will beat out down forward ones, which is really, really, really good. From the same scenario, if you do back to forward into Dragon at the wall, which is a feint, so to speak, because this is a wall splat option, and it is highly delayable. So if you are using the Dragon transition to throw off opponents' reaction time, this being faster, which means it will be a lot harder to react that you didn't finish it, and that you'll be able to catch them, possibly. The same thing goes with pretty much everything in Dragon, so any Dragon feint like Dragon 1 back into that, sidestep 1 up into that, like most of the Dragon transitions, except for back to forward, but the exception with back to forward is that it has a follow-up, which protects it, is that most of the frame data for the Dragon transitions are really good, and they catch opponents on poor reaction times a lot, especially because of Bull Strike, and there's a change to that, and we'll get to that, is because of the fact that the transitions have good frame data, which makes it, this change being even faster, makes it a lot harder for the opponents to react to interrupt in time. So it gives Lei a lot more leeway in using his Rage Drive. My favorite thing about the fact that the Dragon Rage Drive is faster is that this is honestly, in my opinion, one of the harder Rage Drives to land because of how slow it used to be and how Dragon transitions usually were not super free because basically, like, any Dragon transition he had was almost really, like, interruptible unless you did Wolf Strike. That was the only time it would really stop someone. But now that you have a faster Rage Drive, you will have an additional option to catch someone. Because I have been doing Dragon 1 back cancel into Rage Drive, and it's worked, but now it'll be even basically more effective. The second change to it is that they've increased the lower range of the attack, which means that it will have a lower hitting hitbox, which hopefully means that the hitbox will just be bigger overall, because that basically means it will hit low profile stuff easier, and they will have a meatier hitbox. So, because tendency, this move has a tendency to whiff kind of like that, although that was pure range, I'm hoping that those situations will happen less often with it having a bigger hitbox. The Panther Rage Drive, they didn't increase the speed, and rightfully so, because if they increase the speed of this, that would be ridiculously stupid, because it already comes out at 11 frames, I believe. It might be 12, one of the two. And the cool thing about this change is that they decreased the recovery time after it hits by 5 frames, which means that, as you can see, actually I don't know if you can see it, but Lei actually recovers quite a bit after this Rage Drive lands, so that means that his combo options afterwards are kind of limited since he's barely able to move just as the opponent is almost out of their screw state stun. So with the decrease on the recovery time, that means that Lei will actually be able to do something like that a lot easier, since that's already kind of risky to do in a match because it's kind of a difficult link in a combo, so to speak. But that will be basically a lot easier now, which will be great. Since Panther Rage Drive, I want to say, is probably his best Rage Drive. Tiger Rage Drive also was increased from 16 to 14 frames, and it also increased the low range of its attack. Once again, I think this means that it will hit lower to the ground, and it should be, because I mean, look how low his hand is. It should be already be hitting really low to the ground. But the special thing about this is that this will help the Tiger transitions a lot, because down forward 1 plus 2 forward into hit is +3, which will mean that Tiger Ray Drive will come out at 11 frames, so that it will trade with, I believe, trade at Magic 4s, and only be beaten by jabs, which means that opponents will be forced to jab in order to beat the Rage Drive or any other potential follow-ups, really, which means that you can hold forward, you can bait the jab with a backdash. It'll be a panic situation for the opponent where they have to hit a button, or else they will be forced into a really bad mix-up situation. And if they don't hit a button because they're like, oh, he's going to parry me or he's going to make a whiff or something, then you basically get the stance for free. So it's going to be a lot better situation where the opponent will have a harder time interrupting this Rage Drive, because there are situations where even Rage Rush on hit here, I'll do Rage Drive immediately because I have Rage. Why not? Because it's, you know, high damage launcher, 50-50 mix-up, and they will still interrupt me. And because I believe Tiger Rage Rush is... because the Tiger Rage Drive is the Tiger transition from Rage Rush is +2. This will mean that it will be only interruptible at 12 frames, which for most people is going to mean that they can't use their down forward 1. Some people will be able to use their down forward 4s, but they must commit to a generic down 4, magic 4, jab, whatever, to beat the Rage Drive, which is going to once again limit the opponent's options very much so, since actually this coming out at 14 will actually mean that this is now the fastest attack in Tiger, because the fast attack from Tiger is normally Tiger 4 or Tiger 2-2, which are both at 15 frames. So this is actually going to add another layer to it, the fact that this is faster. Also, the fact that this is faster means that you can also use this to whiff punish more reliably. If you're doing Tiger backdashing and someone whiffs in front of you, this is going to be a lot easier to land that. You don't need as much of a good reaction. This also coincides with the 4 neutral 4-1 Tiger change, but I'll talk about that when I get to it. I'm also hoping by the fact that they mean increase the low range of its attack means that it's grounded, which usually is a scenario where this will happen. See, that works normally, but I'm hoping that the low range of the attack means a substantial increase in its lower range attack, which means that it will hit grounded, and that will be a nice little add-on if somebody decides to stay on the ground versus Tiger, since one of the strategies to beat Tiger is if you get knocked down, just stay on the ground, because the only thing that can hit you is Tiger 4, and that's like a really whatever low to get hit by while you're grounded. If you're in Rage and you have Tiger, and the opponent's grounded, this is going to add another layer where it's like, if you don't get up, I'm going to hit you with this Rage Drive, and it's going to do at least, I don't know, probably 40 damage into a somewhat of a mix-up anyways. So if you don't want to get that to happen to you, especially if their life is really low, you got to get up, which is going to enforce more of the mix-up, and it's going to create a better Okuzemi game for Lei, especially when he's in Rage. The Crane Rage Drive was not changed too much. They increased the low range of its attack, which is actually a universal change overall to Crane up forward 4. This is the same change. This is a great change because this means that the Crane auto hop kick, Crane up forward 4, and I think, did they change up forward 3? I'm not sure if they changed up forward 3. I don't think they did, but the Crane auto hop kick that happens whenever you low hop Crane will now consistently, or rather better hit low profile lows. I don't know if Geese has any to show, possibly down 2. I doubt it though. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Besides the point is that there were certain lows, like let's say AOP's, Link's sidestep 3, Fang quarter circle forward 1. There are certain lows where they're so low to the ground that Lei will not be able to launch them, despite making the right read that they would low him while he's in crane stance. And both the Rage Drive and up forward 4 are going to be a lot better at hitting low profile opponents, which is an overall good change. The one thing that I don't like though about this that they didn't change is that they did not change its frame data on block, because as it is right now, Crane Rage Drive is 0 on block, which means that you actually still more or less need to take the same guessing situation because at the wall, because Crane Ray Drive, I mean, the Crane stance fastest move is 13 frames, and it's a high, which means that you could jab Lei with impunity and still be okay with it. Of course, the mix-up still stands there, that if you low Crane and he stays in Crane, you can get hopkick for it. But I like the fact that it's safe, but the fact that Crane Ray Drive does not give you a mix-up is kind of unfortunate, but it is one of the higher reward stances that Lei has, so I kind of understand why they didn't give that to him. Moving on here, we have 1+2. They increase the low range of the attack. This is mostly going to help with situations with a low parry, with something like this. On small characters, the 1+2 part has a tendency to whiff, as well as after certain launchers that have a lot of pushback, such as forward, forward 2. So situations like that might push them back a little bit too far. Also, after wall standing people's forward, especially from a far distance away, there's a lot of pushback in here, which means that 1+2 has a tendency to drop. At the same time, off-axis, sometimes 1+2 will whiff after a 4-3-1, so I'm hoping that the 1+2 change will help with making combos a little bit more consistent for late off-axis, as well as those combo situations where he doesn't really have that much to work with. Overall, though, as a change in terms of the move's neutral usage, it doesn't really change it that much since it is already a high, but it could possibly hit some low-profile attacks and still act as a counter-hit launcher. But overall, it's not really that big of a deal of a change other than just combo consistency. So we got down back 4 forward, and this is a pretty big change. I'm not entirely sure what they mean by the change. Sometimes the translation for the frame data, I mean the changes, as with the Season 2 changes, are not always the best, so basically what it's saying is delay the timing in which the opponent's attack can be blocked by 10 frames. Now this to me initially sounded like, well, down back 4 actually means that you can block faster from down back forward into Drunken, but this might not actually be the case, and I think it's actually a nerf. And it might be actually that down back 4 forward will have really bad recovery based on whiff. It will have like 10 frames of whiff recovery, which means that you will basically get effed up for whiffing this. This coincides with the fact that down back 4 forward into Drunken is now a relauncher again. So basically, the Namco is like, okay, we gave you a launcher out of Rave Spin now. Now, please don't muck it up, or else you're going to go with punish for it. Because as it stands right now, down back 4 forward into Drunken actually has decent recovery. But I'm looking like they're going to actually kill the recovery on it in exchange for getting a launcher, which is fine with me, since basically don't ever make this whiff, basically. Well, you can still hit it, but, you know, it's not, you can't ever whiff it. It doesn't have to launch, but you can still hit it. Back 1-1 fixed an issue where the property is different that of 1-1. This is a small bug. It's not really that much of a difference. It's the fact that it does 13 and not 19. And it's something that happens a lot, especially if you're blocking and then you do 1-1 as retaliation. Not much of a big change, and it's not something that I encounter too often as a bug, but it's a welcome change nonetheless. Up 1+2 new move, so I can't really say what this is or I have an opinion on it because I don't know what it is. It's a new move, but I see kind of where they're going with this. It's because basically, as it stands right now, they added a new move up 1+2 and added a 4. And the reason why they did that is because they wanted a new layer for this move, because previously this move did nothing other than just a combat roll and left you in full crouch. And the mix-up for it is kind of poor, especially since the roll is really slow, so it's very possible for someone to just jab you straight out of the air on reaction out of it. Like, they could just like, oh, you're not allowed to do that, just jab, you can get your flow comboed. So adding another move to this might help it, depending on what it is. I will be more disappointed if it's another mix-up at the end of it. I will be happier with the move if it's a mid-air move, like while he's coming at you, it's some kind of attack. Like such maybe a plus strand mid, or like a high or something you have to duck. Hoping it's a mid, because 1+2s tend to be mids anyways, and also that having a high-low mix-up out of this would just make it kind of stupid, because I mean you just duck the whole time. But it seems like so the most likely thing is that they're just trying to add a mix-up to this, because the mix-up to up 1+2 right now is up 1+2 into a full crouched launcher, or wall send 3 or 4 or whatever, into finishing the move into the 4, which is a natural hit launcher that tracks really well, but it's also like launch punch and well block. So it's pretty much the definition of like high risk, high reward. It's a launcher that's also launchable. But the problem with this thing is that it's kind of easy, not super easy, but you can tell that Lei is not going to do the low because the delay of the low is pretty much impossible. Like, you have to do it right away, or else you're just going to go into full crouch. So it's kind of like fuzzyable. So the situation is more of they need to add something else to this combat roll in order to give it more flexibility. The ideal of Uplifts to Almost 2's utility is if they made it like some kind of plus frame mid that forced the opponent to block there for whatever reason. I mean, it could still leave you in crouch, but it like act as a slash kick almost, or a knockdown or some kind of mid or whatever. If that was the case, that would be good, because then that means that this move could be used more often. And if it was used more often, that means that you would be able to see Lei's approach easier, because in my opinion, Lei has one of the worst, if not the worst, approach in the game. So being able to approach with up 1+2 would be kind of nice, especially if it could go over some Repukins, but I kind of doubt that's going to happen, because it's pretty hard to get this to work all the time. As you can see, he still gets hit, but you need like a really, really early-ass read in order to go over Repukin and stuff like that. See, even there, like, I can't believe they didn't fix this. Why didn't they fix that? Also, why that wasn't a punish either, so it doesn't really matter, since Geese would probably still be able to hit you anyway. So, I hope whatever they do 1+2 is really nice, but I'm not sure what else they could do with it, because the move is seeing very little usage right now, because it's very situational in its usage. The best time to really use it, in my opinion, is either right after like a combo. So, you know, screw, and then do up 1+2, and then maybe they wake up into it, maybe they don't, maybe they stay down. Staying down is probably the best option. But you don't really see it used too much in the open, like while both opponents are standing. It's more of a post-combo Okuzemi option. You can use it in the open, but if the opponent is sharp, they can just jab you out of it. And it's not that hard to jab them out of it either. So I hope that they add something to prevent this move from being interrupted and make it a little bit scarier. Hopefully the mid is safe, but we'll see. So now we've got up 4 3+4. First hit is gonna hit lower, which is something that should have been there a long time ago. Because if you look at this move, it looks like Lei is like hitting, like landing on them, and that's why it's hitting. But the animation is actually showing that it hits the upper part of their body, and that's why it's launching them. Now, this change is basically going to make it so that it hits lower to the ground, and it can't be the only Lei player that used this move and thought that it might hit AOP, because like, oh well, he's landing on them. That's gotta be like an anti low profile move, because you know, much like this, it's very similar, but really he's only hitting the upper half of their body. But since they're going to make it hit lower, that is going to give it a really nice benefit against low-profile characters. Maybe even make it easier to approach characters like Ling or Eddie. Previously, they took this move away, but up 4 3+4 used to have a follow-up, up 4 3+4 4, and the second hit actually did hit grounded, but we do not have that anymore, sadly. Next up, we have 4 neutral 4-1 forward and Dragon 4-1, so Wolf Strike into Tiger. There's a typo here on the translation for the patch notes, I believe. It's saying that which was it? Sped up the timing in which the move can be performed from Tiger by 3 frames. Now, as you all probably know, Tiger does not have a 4-1, it just has Tiger 4. So they're probably talking about sped up the transition from 4-4-1 to Tiger. And as it stands right now, 4-4-1 forward into Tiger on hit is 0 on hit and about -5, I believe. Which means that if you do this on forward and on block, you are pretty much in a force mix-up. Like, you can't actually parry because it's 2 negative frames for the opponent, for you to actually parry something. And on hit, this is still at 0, so it leaves a similar situation to down forward 1+2 forward on block, except the fact that the opponent is standing. Now, with this change, this is going to make it so that instead of being -5, it will be -12. I mean, sorry, not negative 5, -2 on block, which means that Tiger 4 will still come out at 17 frames, and Tiger 2 will still come out at 17 frames as well, which is not really the big issue. The big change here is, though, that because he's less negative frames, he will actually be able to hold forward, and he will be able to Tiger parry more effectively, and he will also be able to crush lows more effectively as well with Tiger 3. So that means that if the opponent sees you transition, and they're like, oh, he's in Tiger, let me interrupt him, you can actually hold forward, and you can reliably parry now, which is a really great change, in my opinion. That's going to open up the move more. On hit, it was also cause +3, which will create a situation very similar to down forward 1+2 forward on hit, which means that if the opponent does not interrupt you with a 12-frame move or faster, I believe, then that means that they can still get launched by a Tiger 4 or Tiger 2-2 uninterrupted. And now with the Tiger redrive change, to ensure all options are beat, they have to jab or dig jab or flash back one from Xiaoyu or whatever, because with the redrive from Tiger being 14, it will trade with everything that's 11. And if you trade with Tiger redrive at 11, you might still get launched even if it's a Magic 4, because of the fact that Tiger redrive leads a really long launch state. But nonetheless, that's going to be a really great change. It's going to add more to the usefulness of forward to 4-1 Tiger, because as it stands right now, I think forward to 4-1 neutral is a lot better overall. But now that the frame data from the Tiger transition is buffed, it's going to be a lot more usable, just like down forward, 1+2 forward. Which also means that basically you could do this, and it will have the same effect as this. It means that you could do a 12-frame transition into down forward 1+2 forward on block, which is really, 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 really good in terms of the same frame data situation. And a lot of Lei's frame data needs fixing, so I'm glad a majority of the changes are frame data fixes, even though they're not for moves that I want them to fix. But a welcome change nonetheless. Alternatively, this could mean that Dragon Wolf Strike comes out 3 frames faster, which is absurd, which means it would come out at 7 frames, which means that the fastest input would be 10, which means that this would be a 10-frame counter hit launcher. I mean, more or less a 10-frame Magic 4, which is absurd. So, and this would be 7 frames from Dragon, so that's kind of absurd. So I don't think they'll do that. Although I would not be displeased if they did that. But I'm pretty sure they're talking about the Tiger transition. While running 1 Tiger SWAT has been changed from 24 to 22, and they fixed a bug where it could be parried, except by Geese, because Geese is a cheater. So basically this makes it so this is a little bit better, and because it hits faster, this one means that it'll get interrupted less often, and also it'll get tagged randomly by moves less often as well. I wish that they had fixed the tracking, or maybe added a little bit less pushback on block, but nonetheless, it's still a good change. It's not the best change. The slightly 2 frames is going to be minute, but it's going to be noticeable when you're using it in situations where the opponent might want to try to interrupt you with a jab or something, because it's basically going to be a little bit harder for them to interrupt with a jab, but not too much harder. It's such a cool combo. Sidestep 4, decreased moves tracking. This is the only one that's like a weird decision to me, because no one really complained about this move other than the fact it was safe. Honestly, I think it would have been much more substantial of a nerf if they made this move punishable. But considering that's not the fact, basically they decreased the tracking, which means that it doesn't track as well. It is what it is. The reason why they made this change is because Lei's sidestep mix-up is actually pretty good. It's between basically any kind of move, mostly raise spin, mixed in with a sidestep to sidestep 4 because it's a safe launcher. And by decreasing the move's tracking, they decrease some of the strength of this move, and that it'll be able to be stepped more often. But the good news is that because you're constantly sidestepping to force a sidestep mix-up, you're going to be realigning with your opponent a lot, so this is not really an issue too much, unless the opponent times a well-timed sidestep where they step the move just as it comes out, then it's going to be an issue, which is fine. It's not really a big nerf. It's still going to be a usable move, very much so. Next up, we've got Snake 4 being up from 11 to 13. Now, one of the poor things about Snake 4 is that it is it's -2 on hit. And this doesn't really help with some of the move's main problem, which is the fact that it's -2 on hit, which means that it could be swung back at by another low crush low, like a generic down 4 or a down 3, and make it uninterruptible more or less, because it's too fast to be hit by the mids of Snake, and it's high crushing, so it can't be hit by 1 or 1-2-1 or whatever. The damage increase is very small, like 2 points, which is welcome, but it's not really gonna do too much. Snake 4 is kind of like, I use it a lot as a far range poke and then kind of just back off sometimes depending on the opponent's range and whatnot. Very rarely I will use it to bait into a Panther Step, but because of the move's poor frame data, I don't tend to do that too often against experienced opponents, but using it at max range is kind of nice. The damage increase, I wish it was a little bit more to be worth like a change, because it's so minor. Much minor more than the previously, Racepin did, I believe 28 or 29, and now it does 31, which is kind of a little bit bigger and nicer in comparison, especially since they made I think this 34. Yeah, 34. We went up from 31 to be 29 and 31 or 32 or something like that. That's a little bit better of a change, but the fact that Snake 4 was given such a minor buff is kind of like a weird change. I mean, I suppose that it's welcome damage, but it is what it is. Because basically that's comparing this, and the damage differences are extremely minute. So, odd change, but I mean, I'm not going to be a beggar. I'll take buffs where I can get them. Panther 1-2, decrease the distance between the character and the opponent when the first hit lands. Now this is a very ambiguous change. This could either be a nerf, or this could be a buff or a fix. There are a couple ways to interpret this. The way that I interpret it is that this is going to leave them closer on hit, which is good for 2 reasons, and bad for maybe another reason. The good news is that if this knocks them down, this means that when they're closer, that means that Lei has an easier time running up and forcing a mix-up, which is a good thing, because Panther 1-2 kind of knocks them a little bit far away and makes it a little bit harder to do a follow-up mix-up, because they dash up and they're already up already. But if you're a little bit closer, you don't have to move that far, and you're already right in front of them, so you can apply a mix-up right away, which is gonna be really good. It's kind of comparison to maybe how, like, the how Rave Spin kind of leaves them really close. I imagine it'll be kind of close like that, which will make it a little bit harder to get away from a wake-up mix-up or a grounded hit or something like that. The other good way that it can be interpreted is that Pan 1, since it did say the first hit, but it's saying Panther 1-2, Pan 1 leaves come kind of far on hit, and it's already +2, so if they were to leave them a lot closer, it would be a lot better for Lei to force some kind of small mix-up or interrupt or whatever, or use movement. Because as it stands right now, Panther 1 doesn't do anything unless you point-blank hit it, because then it's already really close. But if you're using Panther, it's already really hard to get someone close to someone in Panther because of the fact that the stance can't block mid. So if you're using it from here far away and it actually moves the opponent closer to you, that could be a little bit cooler as a move. It also could fix this situation. Let me see if I can get it. Let's see. It's kind of hard to ascertain. Maybe, nope, just a little bit too close. This is really hard to judge the range on this. I'm gonna give one more attempt, and then you'll all know what I'm talking about once I do it correctly, I guess. Anyways, so the point is that sometimes this move will actually not trip and do the full damage. It will only knock down 1 hit. This is mostly because the second it's whiffing, and it's only hitting at the max range, Panther 1-2. And basically when you're at the max range of this move, it actually doesn't really convert into the full, like, Hail Sweep kind of damage, because of the fact that it basically just trips them once, and the second it whiffs, which will only do like 13 damage, maybe a little bit less, and then you get a guaranteed down 4, and that's about it. If they do change that, which is a welcome change, that situation will happen less often, because it's saying that the pushback, the distance between the two will be decreased, which means that it'll be a lot easier to land, basically the clean hit version Panther 1-2. Now, there is some potential drawbacks to this, though. If it does, in fact, leave them closer, this will mean probably that it's going to be a lot harder to do something like this, where it'll get a wall splat at the wall if you space out Panther 1-2 with the wall correctly. That could be a little bit poor. It also could mean that when you block Panther 1-2, it'll leave the opponent closer. I don't think that's what it's saying, but that's an opinion I've heard, and it's already launch punishable, but making it even easier to launch punish is not really something I would like. Also, it could just leave Panther 1 closer on block as well. So there's a couple of different ways to interpret it. I'm hoping that it's either the Okazemi closer, or that it's the clean hit, like non-clean hit, like tip range, like that, exactly like that, does not occur as often, which would be really nice, since that is a really annoying situation to happen. It also buffs the move in general, not because like it's a bug fix, because I think it's intended, but it basically means that you can use Panther Scratch from farther away and still be okay, which is good. Crane up forward 4, so we talked about this already. Basically, Crane auto hop kick and up forward 4 will hit low profile a lot easier, which is a change that I've wanted for a long time, which is great. And now we're getting into the Drunken changes, and the last set of changes for Lei overall. So, Drunken, I'm going to talk about this all at once. So, Drunken 3 has been changed from 13 to 10, and this is to compensate with Drunken 3 1+2, which is the new move that they saw in the trailer, which is just confirmed a screw move when it's launching. Now, this honestly all depends what 3 1+2, which is the new move, does on hit and on block. We know on launching, what's in the air, it's definitely a screw move, which is great. That's a launcher. And it definitely looks like a high, because if it wasn't a high, there would be no reason to ever duck against 3-2, because it's like, there's a mid and a mid, like, why would I ever duck? So if 3 1+2 is a high, and it gives some kind of advantage, like either it's plus on block or it's just safe, this would give the opponent more incentive to duck. Now, interestingly, 3 1+2 has a feint, which is 3 1+2 down. Drunken 3 1+2 down, which could mean a lot of things. I'm hoping that it leaves Lei either in back turned or in neutral, although most likely it will be similar to 1+2, back turn 1+2, 2. 1+2, 2, right? Yeah, not 1+1. I always match 1+2 twice there, which may leave in a play dead situation. It might be an attack feint. It might be a nothing feint, such as ballroom dance back, something like that. I would prefer it to be like that, because that would give Lei a lot more options to work with. I would be kind of more disappointed if it was something like 1+2 down, which doesn't really have a great purpose. But it could be that's what it is. It could also mean that it's a direct transition to play dead, something like Dragon Stance down 3+4, or like up 1+2 down, or something like that, where it's a direct transition into play dead, which means that maybe if the opponent tries to interrupt after 3 or something, it'll crush. Also, if the opponent is like, they're waiting for 1+2, they're ready to block it, and then you feint, then like nothing happens or something like that. So it's a mysterious situation, really. It turns into like a three-way mix-up. It turns out it's like, if you duck, you're gonna get launched, because they didn't say anything about changing 3-2's launching properties. So this will still be a counter hit launcher. Also, it's just if you didn't know this already, it's already a natural hit launcher, which is already like really stupid. So basically you don't want to duck there, because there's such a risk in ducking, because it's a safe -1 on block natural hit launcher, which is really stupid. But if the opponent wants to incentive to duck, they're gonna duck because, oh well, maybe whatever this new move is, maybe it's plus, maybe it's just safe, maybe it's a throw, like an attack throw or something. If the opponent ducks that, they're risking themselves to launch. But what is the incentive for them to try and interrupt 3 1+2? Maybe they're blocking mids for so long because of the fact that they don't want to get, launched by 3-2, that they're just going to be stand blocking. They're like, okay, Drunken's coming, let me just stand block, and let me just chillax for a second, let me just block everything that's going on here, and let me reset neutral. Let me get to a state where I can fight back first before we do anything. Maybe they're waiting so long that 3 1+2 he feints. Either he goes into like back turn and he's in a different mix-up, or he goes into play dead and it's like maybe somewhat of a forced play dead mix-up. I doubt it would be a forced play dead mix-up, because that would be actually really stupid. So it just begs, we'll just have to see on September 9th what exactly this will do. My ideal is that 3-1 plus 2 is not a natural combo, but a safe high that is plus on block. Some people are saying that 3-1 plus 2 might be a natural combo, which is really nice, and I doubt it would be a counter hit launcher too, because that would also be really stupid, and I don't think they would buff Lei that much. But it could be a throw, maybe like an unbreakable throw or something like that. It could be like, maybe like what would be really cool is if he was like doing this, it was the throw, and then he drops down into play dead, or goes into neutral, so they're ready to break the throw, and then he ducks all of a sudden, so they press 1 plus 2, and then it's like, oh, with my 1 plus 2, and then he's play deading, so he's avoiding the 1 plus 2, and then he, you know, shenanigans that happen. So there's a lot of potential here. It just depends on really what it is. So we're honestly just have to wait and see. The damage up to 3 is like whatever, because this is already kind of a low damage, low poke. Basically, think of it doing is the same exact damage as that. Honestly, by the way, if you're not using it already, if you're a Lei player, use Drunken 3 too. Like, the move is really good. It's really, really, really good. It's especially one of the best round enders, because from this stance, you're so ambiguous. But I don't want to get into a Lei tutorial, because that's coming at a later point after Season 3 drops. So I don't mind too much about the damage after 3. It is going to make the combo from it worse, but it's not going to matter too much, because the reason why they probably did that is so that this doesn't do like crazy damage, because it's already like 34 and they made it to a launcher be like 50. So we're going to see what it's going to do about that. The launcher for that, by the way, you have to be clean hit range, no doubt. If it's from over here where it just doesn't knock down, you're still plus technically, but 3-1 plus 2 isn't really going to have much of a benefit unless the opponent is like, oh, he's autopiling into the combo, let me low parry, or let me block low and then stay blocking low or something like that. But I do like the applications of 3-1 plus 2. It could be really, really good at the wall. It could just be a really cool situation. We'll see. We'll have to just see what it is. If it's a double mid, I'm going to be like, wow. Or natural combo. If it was natural combo, I'm going to be like, wow. Because there's no doubt that the 3-1 plus 2 is going to create a similar situation to this, where it screws like that if it hits, because I think almost every screw move does something similar to that, except for like something like that, but besides the point, that I would imagine it's probably going to do a spin screw like that. Spin hit stun. And back turn 4-4, increase the move's reach. So this is going to make it so that in situations where back turn 4-1 is not going to hit, because combo distance scaling and all that, back turn 4-4 is going to hit. Not a really crazy change, it's mostly just useful in combos. I would have liked to see back turn 4-4 second it be plus or 0 on block, but it stands it's only like -2 or 3 or something like that, so not much of a crazy change. It doesn't really change much of Forgotten Realm either, since you do use back turn 4-4 to floor break on Forgotten Realm sometimes, but that's pretty consistent in my experience, so not really going to be too much of a change either. And then here's the one that's kind of confusing, because they say during play dead 3. Now the community has their own notations for the grounded stances. This is knockdown, slide stance, play dead, face down. So I don't know if they're talking about this play dead or they're talking about this play dead. I think they're talking about this play dead. Because this one seems to be more in line with the changes that they're talking about. Because they say by enemy's feet. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. Let me see if I can find play dead. Play dead head first, play dead feet first. So I'm pretty sure they're talking about this one. And they say increase the range of attack and increase the strength of pushback to reduce the frequency as the opponent would switch places with the opponent. I mean, where the character would switch places with the opponent. Now, this does sometimes happen where you do, like, trip here like that. Where they will actually kind of, like, teleport behind you. And that's a really rare occurrence to happen. But that is a nice bug fix. Now, playing Lei as long as I have noticed that to indicate the range of knockdown 3, basically, you have to see if they're touching your feet. If they're touching your feet, they're in range. So right now, Geese is in range because he's pretty much touching my toes. Boom, he's in range. But if I'm like over here, or rather maybe like right about here. Oh, I still barely hit. Right about here then. It's not going to hit. And if they increase it so that it has a little bit more range over there, that's a really minor change, since if you already know the matchup, you should be either fuzzy ducking knockdown, or you should just be blocking low. Because taking This mid over the raw launcher that is played at 3 is really worth it, in my opinion. Unless you're at the wall, then it's kind of like you prefer to block the mid, because the mid is the true combo starter at the wall, because knockdown 3 doesn't really give a great situation at the wall, because I can't really do much. I think I might do back to 4, that's it. Yeah, it's 35 versus full launch. Yeah, full launch. Full launch, so doesn't really matter in that situation which one to block, because the mid is more scary. But if they do increase the range of it, that's a nice change, but it's not really something that like really mattered too much for me, since, you know, as playing Lei, you're already supposed to know the ranges of your moves, and this wasn't really something I've heard anyone ever complain about. So it's kind of like a weird, like, auxiliary kind of like minor buff that wasn't really warranted, but nonetheless, I guess it's a little bit more interesting that it works that way. The only other situation I can see it is that maybe played at 3, like this one, the head towards, has more range, but once again, like, not really something anyone ever complained about. So we'll have to see. Because this situation, head towards play dead, is already kind of like OSable with movement and patience, because the mid has really shitty tracking and range compared to the low. So if you're far away from Lei, you don't need to guess mid, because the low is the one that has the greater range. So it's not really something that can be fixed by giving the low more range, and that just emphasizes the weakness of the stance. Unless you're at point blank range, then otherwise the best thing to do is either jump or sidestep Lei. So I'm willing to bet they're talking about this one. This doesn't count because that's just regular 3, and this is face down / sidewinder, and this already has ginormous range, so I don't think that increasing the range of that would really help anything. Or this move, for that matter. So I have to believe that they're talking about knockdown 3. Okay, so that's all the changes that they have for Lei. Some of the ones that I'm kind of disappointed. Not disappointed, but I wish they had changes. I wish they had increased the frame data differences of Razor Rush, and also increased the hitbox of his jab and his Razor Rush as well as maybe his down forward one. That would kind of be nice. Range and hitbox size, I wanted that to be bigger, and I also wanted this to not be parryable. But they went a different direction, and they definitely increased his dangerousness and rage, so that's going to be a lot easier to land rage tries, which is really nice. They gave him a launcher out of down back 4. Drunken 3 too, I am pretty excited to see what they do. 3-1 with the Strether, see what they do with it. If it's a really great pressure tool, you might be seeing Drunken stance more often. Not just at the wall, it could be really useful at the open as well. It could be really scary. A lot of quality of life changes, such as the lower hitting hitboxes on Crane of up forward 4, up forward 3+4. Raw running 1 is faster is really nice, because set move is already pretty trash, and now it's a little bit less trash, but we'll have to see if it's not as trash. This is one of the best changes, honestly, it being basically a free down forward 1+2 in the open, regardless of whether it hits or it doesn't. And by the way, this hitting, if you use this as a block punisher like a god, you basically get this on hit as a punisher, which is really crazy when you think about it. So it could be really, really cool situation to play around with, and I'm excited to see where that goes. Either that change, or they made this 7 frames, which is kind of stupid. If they made that 7 frames, I'm like, good shit, Murray, good shit. I like that change too. I'm not sure too much about the up 1+2 change. Once again, we'll have to see what the move is. I hope it's a plus frame mid, or some kind of like mid-air mid. I really don't hope it's a mid when you land, because that's already something you can do, because you can just do basically that into that. But we'll have to see what it is. And I think that's mostly it. It's mostly buffs, which is all really good. And this being shitty on whiff, that's like whatever, since you shouldn't be whiffing anyways. Don't whiff, that's just a general Tekken rule. And like this having less tracking, those are pretty much the only nerfs. Maybe except the Panther 1-2 one, depending on what happens, but these are really, really minor nerfs, and I don't even know anyone who complained about this. I mean, it's a safe launcher, sure, but why didn't they just make it unsafe? make a -10 or something. But nonetheless, really good, and Lei's going to definitely be a lot better in Season 3. They didn't address some of his core issues, such as poor poke range, and like sometimes adjusting combos can be a little bit difficult. Oh, and that speaking of which, while running one could be easier to land in combos because it comes out faster now. But they definitely made it so that he will be a lot scarier up close because of both having rage. When he's in rage, it's a lot scarier now, and his range 0 mix-up will be a lot scarier. Also, speaking of which, the meta I see developing around this is that because down back 4 is now a regular launcher, this will mean that people were going to be trying to actively stop it because it's so strong. And if you aren't aware already, down back 4 actually has better tracking than down back 4 by itself. If you do down back 4 by itself, whether in transition or not, it actually is more steppable to the left. Sidewalk left beats it almost completely, which means that you may have situations where you're dashing at someone and someone's trying to treat you like a Mishima, where they'll start moving left. And in that scenario, you might be able to get in one of these, or one of these, or one of these, or realign, and then, you know, up 4-3 or something like that, down 4-2, down 4-1-1, any of his tracking moves, whatever. So it might be a meta that might develop against Lei's down back 4 in the screw. It also is going to intensify people to be like, don't let Lei get close to you because he's now Devil Jin. Because he has a launching sweep that's unseeable. So you got to be careful with that. Also, if you are still new to Lei, you can't do the down back 4 launcher from here. I know that Ray Spin has a ton of range and that's great, but they aren't that kind to us. You have to be pretty much range 0 to be able to get that sweep down. 0.5 at the least. So we'll have to see. Anyways, we're going to talk about Leo next, so stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching.